I am a pretty major Pokemon fan.
Whoa, who could have seen that coming?
However, despite this, I wouldn't consider myself a great battler. While I've been doing Pokemon Draft League since the beginning of Generation 8 and I have been playing the game since 2010, I've never experienced that much success when it came to Pokemon VGC. So when Pokemon Champions released, I honestly didn't pay that much attention to it. The only reason I even downloaded it was because there were a couple of draft leagues that I wanted to join that had swapped to using Pokemon Champions over Scarlet and Violet. And because of Pokemon Champions requiring the usage of victory points to train your Pokemon, if I wanted Pokemon to use in draft leagues, I was going to have to do some grinding on the VGC ladder. So I gritted my teeth, accepted my fate, and started the grind. What I didn't expect is that I would come up with one of the most fun teams I have ever used in the entirety of my time playing Pokemon. And not only that, this team was one I created all on my own with minimal outside influence, very little advice from the meta, and even using a Pokemon that has since become one of the most coveted Pokemon in usage, before it became popular. What up, Homedawgs? My name is Gokey Gamer, and today I will be telling you all the story of how I, a VGC noob, got to the Masterball rank in Pokemon Champions all on my own. I hope that you all enjoy. Because I did all of these battles during my free time while chilling either by myself or with my girlfriend, I don't actually have any footage from the battles that I did. However, I do remember my thought processes as I modified the team, so this will be a shorter summary type video going over my journey from Pokeball to Masterball, as well as where I ultimately finished in the rankings. I will also have some related footage from my battles in this regulation so that you can at least see the team in action. I will be displaying Pokepastes of each build of my team so that you can see how this team has evolved into the eventual powerhouse it would become, similar to the example you see on screen right now. I will also display the rental code to my finished team at the end of this video so that if you're interested in trying out this team during this regulation, you'll be able to. With all that being said, let's go ahead and start out with the very first team I built and how I built it. After completing the tutorials of the game for free victory points, it was time for me to head to the rental ranch to choose my first Pokemon. For those who don't know, the first time you go to the ranch on a new account, you are given a fixed set of Pokemon that include Charizard, Tyranitar, Armarouge, Palafin, Pikachu, Lucario, Gardevoir, Absol, Altaria, and Snorlax. Each of these picks will also give you 5 other fixed Pokemon as well. So for example, while Pikachu would be generally considered one of the weaker options on paper, the teammates you get arguably make this the best pick, since you get an Adamant Kingambit, Jolly Garchomp, and a timid Gengar for free. Of course, I didn't know any of this at the time. So I took Palafin as my first Pokemon. Thankfully, it turns out that Palafin also gives you some pretty good teammates in Hydreigon, Aggron, Beedrill, Sylveon, and Gengar. While there is definitely a weak spot with this team, we can still fix it by using some of our abundance of quick tickets that we got from tutorials. Most of the Pokemon we pick up don't really matter, except for one. Somehow, we managed to get our hands on arguably the best Pokemon in the format, Sneasler. With super high attack and speed stats, really great abilities, solid offensive typings, a signature move that's still really good despite being nerfed in this game, and solid support moves, it shouldn't be any surprise that Sneasler ended up replacing Beedrill in the first iteration of this team. Speaking of, let's talk about the first iteration of this team now that I've got an actual squad together. Starting things off, let's go ahead and talk about my first Pokemon, Palafin. This is a pretty standard bulky set with Wave Crash, Jet Punch, Close Combat, and Flip Turn. Most of my EVs throughout this journey are just going to be 2 stats maxed out simply because I had no idea what the meta sets were. And this Palafin is no exception, as we're running max HP to tank as many hits as possible and max attack with an adamant nature to hit as hard as possible. I also gave him a Citrus Berry, partially because it's one of the items that you get for free, and also because it helps the base form Palafin tank hits a bit better so that I can pivot out to trigger my Zero to Hero ability and unlock a more powerful form. Nothing much more needs to be said about this set, so next let's talk about one of the best Megas in the game, Mega Gengar. Unfortunately, I didn't have the guts to try and run the infamous Wolfie VGC Perish Trap set, so this is a standard max special attack, max speed set, and a timid nature with Shadow Ball, Sludge Wave, Protect, and Focus Blast. The dual stabs are self-explanatory as well as Protect, and Focus Blast was there for any bulky steel types I encountered in the game, specifically Kingambit and Mega Aggron. Speaking of, let's go ahead and talk about our other Mega on this team, Mega Aggron. The main reason I added this Pokemon was because one of the very few bits of content I had seen talking about the Champions meta talked about how Mega Aggron was sort of an anti-meta pick. Because of Mega Aggron's insane base 230 defense stat, as well as his ability Filter, weakening super effective attacks, he becomes a nigh unstoppable physical wall that even Pokemon like Garchomp and Sneasler struggled into the matchup a decent amount. As a result, I decided, why the heck not, and added it to the team. I gave him max attack and max special defense with the careful nature to try and make him as specially bulky as possible to maximize longevity. The moveset is Rock Slide, Heavy Slam, Body Press, and Protect. Once again, the dual stabs with the base form are pretty standard. Body Press allowed me to take advantage of my monstrous defense stat, as well as giving me a super effective option against fellow steel types. And finally, Protect is also just a standard addition to any moveset. Something to note about this is while regular Gengar's ability is always locked into Cursed Body, regular Aggron's abilities actually matter here. I had the choice between Heavy Metal, Sturdy, and Rockhead. We can immediately rule out Rockhead since I don't have any moves that would actually benefit from the ability, which leaves us with Sturdy, allowing us to guarantee tank at least one hit, and Heavy Metal, doubling our weight, making Heavy Slam more powerful. Ultimately, I decided to go with Heavy Metal, since despite the fact that we lose this ability if we Mega Evolve, I figured it would come in handy more often than Sturdy. And now that we've finished talking about Mega Aggron, let's finally talk about the main idea and strategy behind this team, which involves none other than Sneasler. At first glance, this looks like a standard offensive Sneasler set, with max speed and attack and a jolly nature, and also the Focus Sash, guaranteeing that she lives a hit while also triggering her ability Unburdened, doubling her speed when her held item is used. However, the real gem comes from the moveset. The moves Dire Claw, Close Combat, and Fake Out are all very standard, but the final move Coaching is what makes this team truly threatening. For those who don't know, Coaching is a support move that you can use on your partner Pokemon to boost their attack and defense. A very simple move on paper, but absolutely devastating on a speedy Pokemon, especially when you aren't prepared for it. For example, while using this on a Palafin and even Mega Gengar can make them hit harder and a bit tankier, the hardest combo to beat comes when you pair it up with Mega Aggron. The second Mega Aggron gets a coaching buff, it's never dying to a physical attack. As an example, if Mega Aggron has a coaching buff against max HP and max special defense Incineroar, Flare Blitz is only doing a maximum of 31.7% to Mega Aggron, while Body Press straight up OHKOs since it doesn't get debuffed by Intimidate. The other major benefit to this is that coaching goes through Protect, so if I'm worried about Mega Aggron getting doubled, I can just simply Protect and get a free +1 attack and defense boost from Sneasler. While Sneaslers were running rampant throughout this entire regulation, I was hoping my Sneasler would catch people off guard. When I got Sneasler, this was the first strategy that came to mind, so I was very excited to try it out. Now, while I had more than my fair share of physical bulk, I still had to consider my special bulk as it was rather lacking. Thankfully, I already had arguably one of the best special walls in the format waiting for me in my box. Sylveon. Of course, I'm sure people have seen how hard Sylveon hits with Hyper Beam and round strats, but people tend to forget how well Sylveon tanks hits on the special end as well. I opt to go with max HP and max special attack with the Modest Nature, the Leftovers as the held item, Pixelate as the ability to turn my normal attacks into fairy attacks, and the moves Hyper Voice, Protect, Yawn, and Quick Attack. Hyper Voice deals hard-hitting special fairy type spread damage, Protect and Yawn could be really tough endgame for my opponent to beat and also forces switches, and Quick Attack is there just in case any Pokemon is in the red, or I just want to try and deal some chip damage. A very basic set, but one that I had full confidence in. And finally, to help out with my lacking speed and special offense, I decided to bring Choice Scarf Hydreigon as the final member of my team with the moves Draco Meteor, Dark Pulse, Flamethrower, and Focus Blast. For the EVs, I went with a modest max special attack and speed build, and of course, the ability is Levitate. This Pokemon was added in part to assist Sylveon in nuking physically bulky mons, while also picking up surprise KOs due to it being scarfed, particularly against Pokemon like Garchomp, Dragapult, and opposing Sneaslers. While my coverage doesn't really take care of fairy types, I figured the rest of my team took care of fairies extremely well, so I wasn't too concerned and wanted Flamethrower for grass types and Focus Blast for dark and normal types. And that's the team that I assembled for the start of my VGC climb. Overall, I was extremely excited to try out the coaching strats with Sneasler and Mega Aggron, and was even somewhat stoked about having such a great special tank in Sylveon. I was also hoping Palafin would suit my team well too, but there was only one way of finding out. Let's try it out in the Pokeball tier. Unsurprisingly, the Pokeball tier was an absolute breeze for this team. Granted, a large portion of the teams I faced were either bots or teams that were clearly built from a very limited supply of Pokemon, but it still felt pretty good to pilot. Some early things to note, the coaching strat was working phenomenally. Sneasler and Mega Aggron are such an amazing duo together, and they just dominated in this tier. Mega Gengar also hit super hard. I remember catching a Kingambit on a Switch as I Mega'd and I destroyed it with a Focus Blast, and it was quite fun. Even Scarfed Hydreigon managed to clutch and pick up surprise KOs, while Sylveon ate special attacks for breakfast and dished out extremely solid Pixelate Hyper Voice damage. Even Quick Attack and Yawn both came in clutch a couple times. The only Pokemon on this team that felt kind of underwhelming was Palafin. Unfortunately, Palafin just didn't really fit this team super well, so whenever this team hit its first roadblock, Palafin was the most likely Pokemon to go. The Great Ball ended up actually being quite similar to the Pokeball tier, but this time there were definitely a few strategies that started revealing themselves to be tough counters into this team. Specifically, Tailwind and Weather strats. While Trick Room also became a slight issue, Tailwind was the strategy I struggled against the most. If Tailwind got set up, doubling the speed of my opponent's Pokemon, that would make Sneasler, Hydreigon, and Gengar struggle heavily in the matchup. This was particularly bad bad when I went up against the typical Sun plus Tailwind team, since, as you can probably tell, the two Pokemon that don't really care about Tailwind don't have a good matchup into Mega Charizard Y. While I didn't encounter Sun teams that often in the Great Ball tier, Tailwind was a massive issue that I needed to address immediately. I also knew that I wanted at least one form of redirection with either Follow Me or Rage Powder, as well as a form of healing. While Mega Aggron is an immense physical wall, if it gets chipped down enough, it can still be taken out if it constantly gets doubled. Not to mention the fact that unfortunately, despite the investment in special defense, Mega Aggron was still susceptible to getting dropped by rogue Focus Blasts or Earth Powers. But was there a Pokemon that helped with speed control, healing, and redirection? Well, yes. And if you were a part of the Scarlet and Violet VGC scene, you most certainly already know what it is. It's Sinistcha. Sinistcha is arguably one of the best support Pokemon in the current format. It has the signature ability Hospitality, which heals up to a quarter of your ally's HP upon switch-in, as well as the signature move Matcha Gotcha, which hits both enemies on the field, gives a whopping 50% HP recovery from damage dealt to both enemies, and even a 20% chance to burn on top of that. Plus, Sinistcha also gets access to Rage Powder for redirecting fighting ground-type attacks that threaten Mega Aggron, Life Dew for constant recovery, and for speed control, we've got Trick Room. For those who don't know, Trick Room flips the turn order on its head, allowing the slow Pokemon to move first, essentially hard countering Tailwind. When my Tailwind opponent saw that I had a Sinistcha, they had to think twice about spamming Tailwind, since if I managed to get up a Trick Room, then they would have a huge disadvantage. With all of this in mind, I realized while Sinistcha wasn't the secret for this team's success, it would definitely help out a lot. While I tried to see if I could get Sinistcha through the usage of quick tickets, I eventually ran out of patience and just grabbed the Sinistcha from my Pokemon Scarlet save file. I gave it max HP and max special defense with the Calm nature to make it as bulky as possible, and then I just had to decide what Pokemon was going to be taken off the team so that Sinistcha could join it. The options I were considering were Mega Gengar, Palafin, and Hydreigon. Mega Gengar because he repeated the Ghost typing and it did not work at all under Trick Room, Hydreigon because while he was able to pick up many surprise KOs, it was still pretty easily countered, and Palafin because, as stated before, it was unfortunately rather underwhelming on this team, and if I took Palafin off, then I could give Sinistcha the Citrus Berry instead. And after much deliberation, I decided that Palafin was the Pokemon that needed to go. While I do think that Palafin would have paired up with Sinistcha the best, and it also allowed me to keep a Pokemon that worked against rain teams and helped against the always threatening sun teams, I valued both Mega Gengar's and Hydreigon's immediate speed and power. Plus, Hydreigon still did well against weather teams as he resists both fire and water moves. Is it a perfect counter? Definitely not, but since weather hadn't been super prominent up until this point, I felt like Palafin was the correct call. So I said goodbye to Palafin and gave his Citrus Berry to Sinistcha. And instantly the team became a lot better. While Sinistcha was far from the one to fix all my problems, and oftentimes it wouldn't even show up in battle, I could tell my opponents were definitely weary of it. And as long as Sinistcha wasn't the only Pokemon remaining on the field, it did an amazing job allowing others like Mega Aggron and Sylveon to be the immense powerhouses they are. I also made some slight adjustments to my current builds. For Mega Aggron, I changed his nature to Adamant since I found myself constantly wishing I was dealing more damage if I didn't have a coaching boost. And the careful nature really wasn't contributing that much. I also changed regular Aggron's ability from Heavy Metal to Sturdy. So that way in the rare situation where Aggron would prefer not to Mega Evolve, I can always guarantee at least live one hit. And also, Heavy Metal really didn't come into play as often as I thought it would. For Hydreigon, I changed Focus Blast to Flash Cannon since I realized I was never clicking Focus Blast with Hydreigon, and despite my team being very anti-fairy, Hydreigon still appreciated having a super effective steel move. And finally, I changed Sneaslur's item to the White Herb. Many people knew about the possibility of Sneaslur's having Unburden in the Focus Sash, so oftentimes they would just double Sneaslur before she even had the chance to use her Unburden ability. Because of this, I figured it would be better if I could trigger Unburden myself, as the White Herb resets the first stat debuffs you get in battle, including our own Close Combat's defensive drops. It also conveniently works against Intimidate Pokemon like the ever-popular Incineroar as well. After Sinistcha was added to the team and these changes were made, we quickly made our way to the Ultra Ball tier, and that is where things started getting tough. The difficulty jump from Great Ball to Ultra Ball was astronomical. The main reason for this is because, for those who don't know, once you climb up a tier, it's impossible for you to be knocked back down to the previous tier. As a result of this, the players and the teams we're going up against now are a lot tougher. This tier is also where we start seeing more of the meta showing up, specifically weather teams. So you know that slight issue I noticed but put off in the Great tier? Yeah, now we do have to address it. Thankfully for some teams, the answer is actually quite obvious. Bringing a Rain Setter. Rain is by far and away the best check for Sun teams, as being able to weaken Fire-type attacks is extremely powerful for our team, especially for Mega Aggron and Sinistcha. And not only that, during my time spending quick tickets, I actually already got one of the two Rain Setters in this game, and that Rain Setter was arguably the better one for this team, Politoed. While most rain teams run Pelipper for Tailwind and Wide Guard support, as well as Hurricane for opposing grass types, Politoed has overall better stats, hits harder, and is slower, all things that suit this Trick Room team quite well. I gave my Politoed max special attack and max defense with the Quiet Nature, which lowers speed to help with weather control and Trick Room. The moveset I went with was Weather Ball, Protect, Muddy Water, and Encore. Weather Ball because it was the hardest hitting 100% accurate water type attack in the game under Rain, Encore in case I was able to catch a Pokemon protecting or using setup, Muddy Water for solid spread damage as well as accuracy drops, and Protect because, well, it's self-explanatory. The Pokemon I ended up dropping for Politoed was not Hydreigon, but instead, Mega Gengar. The reason being was I was actually using Mega Aggron quite a bit more than Mega Gengar at this point, and I actually still valued Hydreigon's resistances, coverage, and surprise speed over the raw power Mega Gengar gave. So despite Mega Gengar being arguably one of the most powerful Megas in the game, I dropped it in favor of a frog. Or I guess, technically a toad? But Politoed doesn't even look like a toad! I gave Politoed the Mystic Water to help boost my water type attacks and help make up for the loss of offense, and then I tested it out. And unfortunately for me, this Pokemon just wasn't working on this team. While it definitely helped against the Sun teams, a whole new issue arose, and it was near impossible for me to find a counter for. Believe it or not, it wasn't the Rain teams by themselves that were the issue, it was specifically... For those who don't know, Archaludon is a Steel Dragon type that works extremely well with Rain teams due to its move Electro Shot. This electric type attack is a 2-turn move that raises special attack during the first turn, then unleashes a 130 base power attack during the second. The other gimmick of this move, however, is that it turns into a 1-turn move when it's in the rain, similar to Solar Beam in the sun. This means that if the rain gets set up, either by my opponent's team or my own Politoed, Archaludon can just simply click buttons. And that's not all either. Archaludon's dual stab coverage of Draco Meteor and Flash Cannon absolutely wrecks my entire team. Not even Sylveon can tank 2 Flash Cannons from offensive variants. And on top of that, Archaludon's defensive capabilities are near limitless due to its ability Stamina. This ability gives Archaludon a +1 defense boost each time it gets hit. It doesn't matter if it's from a spread damage move like Hyper Voice from Sylveon or Fake Out from Sneasler, if you hit Archaludon, it gets a defense boost. As a result of this, you have to be very careful when playing around the bridge. I cannot allow Archaludon to get too many defense boosts because if I do, then it'll become impossible to KO, even with Sneasler and Sylveon. But you also can't leave Archaludon's teammates alive either, because it might be Pelipper, Hurricane, and Tailwind, or Sinistra Hospitality and Life Dew, both of which can be extremely problematic when combined with Arch. Once I got to the Ultra Ball tier, every time I would win a game, I would lose 1 or 2 more. And it was all because of this stupid bridge and these weather teams. It became very clear very quickly if I wanted to continue climbing the ladder, I had to make a change. And while I initially only started doing VGC battles to get victory points for my Draft League games, I started wondering if I could actually somehow make it to Masterball. Unfortunately, at this point, I only had about a week left before the ladder reset. So if I was going to try to make Masterball, it had to be now. You know what? Frick it. I've already come this far, let's see if I can commit and climb all the way up to Masterball. So, I was faced with a dilemma. How on earth was I going to fix this team? I needed to find a Pokemon that could deal with the sun, rain, and specifically counter Archaludon. And also, while Trick Room did help against Tailwind, there were oftentimes Tailwind matchups where Sinistcha really struggled, specifically Sun and Tailwind. So preferably, I'd like to get my hands on a Pokemon above a base 100 speed to at least outspeed some of the typical Tailwind setters. I also needed to figure out what Pokemon I would need to replace on my current team. And unfortunately, the answer was quite obvious. While Hydreigon did quite a lot to help me get to this point, I realized that they didn't have any real synergy with the rest of my team now. The Choice Scarf did amazing at picking up surprise KOs in the previous tier, especially against Mega Charizard Y. But it couldn't function as an endgame sweeper if my opponent set up Tailwind, opposing Sinistcha redirects Draco Meteor, or even if my own Trick Room was up. As much as I loved using Hydreigon on this team, it was finally time to bench them. Hopefully I'll be able to use them again soon. Admittedly, I was also not fully sold on Politoed. It felt like he did fill a niche I needed with weather control, but something wasn't quite right. I wasn't sure if it was the EVs, the moves, or the Pokemon in themselves, but that was going to be an issue I was going to worry about in the future. For now, I had to figure out Hydreigon's replacement. Thankfully, I had done quite a few recruitments from the ranch by this point, so I took a look at my box, and it turns out there were a couple of options that might just work. The first Pokemon that immediately caught my eye was Volcarona. Used on several teams during the Scarlet and Violet era, Volcarona can be quite the threat with Quiver Dance, which raises your special attack, special defense, and speed by 1 stage. Alongside the moves Fire Dance, which has the chance to raise your special attack as well, Pika Drain for HP recovery, and Rage Powder in case I can burn any physical attackers with my Flame Body ability, I decided to give Volcarona a shot. And unfortunately, and unsurprisingly in hindsight, it did not work. I was hoping against our Chowdon matchups, Volcarona could just quiver and Fiery Dance, but Volcarona ran into the same issue of getting hit with Fake Out, not being fast enough to sweep even after a boost, and just getting out damaged by the opposing side of the field. Volcarona was not going to cut it. However, using Volcarona gave me an idea. What if instead of using Setup, I used Light Screen? For those that don't know, Light Screen is a support move that reduces damage from all opposing special attacks by 50% for all of your Pokemon. This means that not only would this help against our Charizard, but also against the grand majority of Sun and Rain teams, especially Mega Charizard and Pelipper. And the resistance buff wouldn't just be for one Pokemon, then it would be for your entire team. This is especially notable for Mega Aggron, as if Light Screen goes up, then there's nothing in the entire game that's going to be able to quickly take him out. Not even special attackers. There are a couple of slight issues though. We need this Light Screen Pokemon to be fast, and we need it to be immune to Fake Out flinches. For example, Prankster Pokemon wouldn't work here because I'd still be susceptible to getting hit with Fake Out and then doubled. Fun fact, I would actually do this against Whimsicott with Sneasler and Mega Aggron. There's also bonus points to be given if the Pokemon chosen doesn't typically run supportive moves. One thing I've learned throughout this process is despite coaching Sneasler being a very viable strategy, many people don't actually expect it. They instead opt to either attack Sneasler with their slower Pokemon or go for Protect to Scout, which allows Sneasler to quickly go for coaching and allow one of my other Pokemon to sweep the opposing team. If we could pull off that kind of surprise with my Light Screen Pokemon, then that could give me very easy control over the battlefield as soon as turn 1. The only question now is, do I even have a Pokemon that can learn Light Screen, is super fast, and is immune to Fake Out? Well, turns out I do. Ladies, gentlemen, theys and thems, I introduce you to none other than Galart's very own Dragapult. Dragapult is a pseudo-legendary Pokemon from Generation 8, and it's currently the fastest non-Mega Pokemon in the entire meta. It's also known as a hard-hitting special attacker with phenomenal coverage, although it actually hits even harder on the physical side, having a base 120 base attack as opposed to a base 100 special attack. And on top of that, Dragapult is a Ghost and Dragon type, meaning that they automatically have immunity to Fake Out due to being immune to normal type attacks. Oh, and Pult also learns Light Screen. Kind of important for the role that he needs to fill in this team. To go along with the theme of catching people off guard, I decide to run a physical and adamant Dragapult since Pult is so fast, I can still outspeed regular Aerodactyl despite not having a speed boosting nature. I initially ran max attack and max speed, although that has since changed. The moveset is Dragon Darts, Phantom Force, Breaking Swipe, and of course, Light Screen. Dragon Darts is an insane move in doubles, allowing you to hit both targets on the field, or if your opponent protects one of their Pokemon or switches to a Fairy type, both hits of Dragon Darts will go into the other Pokemon automatically. This means that Dragon Darts has the unique ability of being a spread damage move or a single target move, and it will always choose the best option. Phantom Force is there as the best physical attacking ghost type attack that Dragapult gets, although the first turn immunity and second turn damage is also extremely nice. Breaking Swipe is there just in case I need to lower the physical attacks on the opposing team, and that of course pairs up extremely well with Light Screen, which on top of all the other things I've mentioned, also forces opposing King Gambits into playing what I like to call Sucker Punch shenanigans. And to finally round out the build, I give Dragapult the Focus Sash, which allows Dragapult to always live a single attack so that way I can guarantee a Light Screen if needed. And now, let's talk about how well it did for this team. I was obviously hoping that Dragapult would work on this team, but even I was shocked at how well it actually did. Dragapult did exactly what it was meant to do, and it also did it flawlessly. Light Screen immediately came in handy, as I was able to handle our Chowdon a lot better due to consistently getting more advantageous positioning. And while it wasn't the perfect fix for weather, it helped a ton. I did admittedly find myself wishing that Dragapult hit a bit harder as it would miss out on KOs occasionally, and the Focus Sash surprisingly didn't come into play that often, but other than that, the set was perfect. I started climbing the ladder again, slowly but surely. The only issue now was that Politoed was not pulling his weight. The rain that was meant to counter Sun barely came in handy, and into rain teams I was essentially going in with a numbers disadvantage. Meanwhile, literally every other member of the team was doing their job perfectly. Sneasler and Mega Aggron were the deadly duo, Sylveon was a specialist, and Dragapult with Sinistcha gave me the double ghost types of support moves to help Mega Aggron. It was clear that Politoed was the Pokemon holding this team back, and if we could find a better Mon that could help control the weather for our team, then this team absolutely had what it took to reach the Masterball division. The only thing now is finding the last piece of the puzzle. What Pokemon is going to replace Politoed? The nice thing is I could already feel what was missing from this team, and that was weather control. However, I didn't know what form of weather control I needed. It was obvious that sun wouldn't work, and the rain hadn't been working either. I briefly thought about snow with Aurora Veil, but that felt like it intruded with Dragapult too much, so that was out of the picture. There was the ability Cloud 9, which, for those who don't know, Cloud 9 cancels the effects of all weather as long as the Cloud 9 Pokemon is on the field. a very powerful ability for countering every form of weather. Unfortunately, the only two Pokemon currently in the game that have access to this ability are Altaria and Drampa, both in their base form. Not only did I feel like these Pokemon didn't quite fit this team, I also didn't have them in the game. See, the only Pokemon that I actually deposited in Pokemon Home for this game is Sinistcha, as I knew that specific Pokemon would fit this team perfectly, and I ran out of patience for rolling the dice in the ranch for them. Every other Pokemon I've used thus far has been a permanent recruitment, and I wanted to see if I could keep it that way. And in order to do that, well, there was one more option that I'd actually considered way back when I added Politoed. However, I honestly didn't think that it was going to work. However, seeing that it was realistically my only option left, I decided to say frick it, let's head into the Sandstorm with Tyranitar. Now, Tyranitar by itself is a beast to take out. If you don't have any fighting type coverage on your team, then it was a real pain to deal with. And sometimes even fighting type moves can't finish the job if they're holding a Chopa Berry, which was the item that I opted to give on my own T-Tar. Now, the biggest reason I hadn't considered Tyranitar sooner was because of his most popular ability, Sandstream. Sandstream summons the final of the 4 weather types in the game that we haven't talked about yet, Sandstorm. Sandstorms deal chip damage to every Pokemon on the field that's not a Rock, Steel, or Ground type, with the added benefit of getting Rock types a hidden +1 boost to his special defense. This is part of the reason why Tyranitar is such a tough Pokemon to take out since he's a Rock Dark type. I was hesitant on adding Tyranitar because I was worried about the sand being an issue for the rest of my team, especially Sneasler and Dragapult. It would essentially make the Focus Sash obsolete anytime Tyranitar set up the sand with Dragapult on the field. The other reason I was hesitant on adding Tyranitar to this team was because of the lack of support moves T-Tar gets. Like, just look at Tyranitar's learn set. It really doesn't get any... Wait a minute. Hold on a second here. Helping Hand is a support move that boosts your partner's attacking move by 50%, no matter if it's physical or special. This can be a really powerful move if it catches your opponent off guard. For example, I could use this to help Sneasler OHKO Incineroars and Chopa Berry King Gambits, or help Dragapult OHKO Garchomp. Since my Tyranitar is meant to be a slow, bulky weather setter, this is the perfect move to once again catch my opponents off guard, similar to Light Screen and Coaching. Perhaps there is something here after all. Hopefully that's the case, since this is my last chance to make this team work. I gave Tyranitar max attack and max special defense with the Adamant Nature, alongside the moves Rock Slide, Crunch, Low Kick, and of course, Helping Hand. Rock Slide and Crunch are the dual stat moves of choice, while Low Kick is there specifically for any rogue steel types we might go up against, especially King Gambit. Hopefully Tyranitar has what it takes to help this team fully come together and finish the push into the Masterball tier. Now, before testing out Tyranitar, there was one slight issue that needed addressing, and that was Dragapult's item. Like I mentioned before, the Focus Sash has terrible synergy with Sand, since due to the sand causing chip damage to all Pokemon on the field that isn't Rock, Ground, or Steel types, that would essentially render Dragapult's Focus Sash null and void. So, what item do I give Dragapult instead? Well, as it turns out, the solution might be easier to find than you'd think. Remember how I mentioned that Dragapult would miss out on a number of KOs that would have really helped me out? Well, what if I fixed that by giving them the Dragon Fang? The Dragon Fang boosts the power of Dragon-type attacks by 20%, exactly the same as the Mystic Water that Politoed used to hold. With this, perhaps Dragapult could deal meaningful damage and even pick up a few KOs. Only one way to find out. It's currently May 10th, only a couple of days before the end of the regulation, and I gotta get from Ultra Ball 3 to Master Ball in the span of only a couple of hours. Let's do this. I will admit, when I went to ladder on the final day, I didn't expect to reach Master Ball. I mean, sure, it would have been super cool, but there's no way this ragtag team I threw together nearly all on my own would be able to do it. And on top of that, I only had a couple of hours before I had to continue on with my day, and I probably wouldn't have been able to log back onto the game before the end of the regulation, making me lose out on the opportunity to reach the Master Ball division. So instead, I just decided to focus on grinding for victory points since I had a Draft League game going on later that day. But then something interesting happened. I started winning. I got a 2-win streak, 3-win streak, 4-win streak. What's happening? I would take the occasional loss. Scarf Garchomps were running rampant, but Sneasler was able to fake them out and allow Dragapult to pick up the KO with a Dragon Fang. Speaking of, opposing Sneaslers couldn't even get an attack off now because even bulky Sneaslers would die to a Dragon Darts from full HP, thanks to the Dragon Fang. Tyranitar Sand actually came in clutch a lot, not just for throwing off my opponent's weather, but also because the Sand Chip would oftentimes be exactly what I needed in order for the rest of my team to pick up KOs. Sneasler and Aggron both continue being the dominant forces that they've been this entire climb, Sinistcha helped provide essential healing and support as always, and Sylveon continues being the best special tank in the meta. There was still the occasional loss, but the climb was going up a lot faster than I expected it to. From Ultra Ball 3, I go to Ultra Ball 2. Literally every move, every item, and every EV came into play at some point. This team was working nearly flawlessly. I hit another 4-win streak before losing a game due to me making a mistake, but I quickly bounced back. Ultra Ball 2 to Ultra Ball 1. We're almost there. We are so close. I decide to give Sylveon Hyper Beam over Yawn because of the memes. I lose a game. But then I win 2 more. Hyper Beam, unironically, comes in clutch. I almost reached the end. All that's left is 1 more win. And I've got time for 1 more game before I had to leave it for the day. 1 more shot. The only question now is, would I be able to make it? And I'm very pleased to say that yes, I was in fact able to make it. Somehow, in some way, I had made it. I, a VGC newbie, had somehow made his way to the Masterball tier with a team I had built practically from scratch with nothing but what this game gave me. Well, okay, minus Sinistcha, but seriously, frick this game for still not giving me one to this day. I was stunned. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My character in the Masterball tier. And I know this ranking isn't the most impressive thing in the world, and I know that I barely made it, but that doesn't change the fact that I did make it. And not only that, I did it while only playing the game for a couple of hours a week and using my own team that I built myself to do it. I won't lie, I was extremely proud of what I had accomplished. This was the ranking that I ultimately finished at. I did play a couple of games that night, 1 victory and 1 loss, and then I decided to call it a day. I know people have mixed feelings about Pokemon Champions, and I won't lie, I definitely do too. But to be honest, if it weren't for this game, I might never have gotten to experience the satisfaction of climbing the ladder with your very own team and having that feeling of success reaching the top of the ladder. And for that, I will always be grateful for this game. Thank goodness it's free though, because if it wasn't, I would have never gotten it. Thank you all so sincerely much for watching this video. If you all enjoyed, please consider leaving a like, subscribing to the channel, and leaving a comment letting me know your favorite part of the video and or your favorite Pokemon that made an appearance on my team. I'm hoping to reach 500 subscribers by the end of the summer, and we are so close to reaching that goal. Speaking of, thank you all so much as well for the insane support on the Dice A Million video. As of the time of this recording, somehow that video has gotten 2.7 thousand views. I'm gonna be so honest, I did not expect it to do as well as it did, so seeing how successful it has gotten, and also that people decided to buy the game because of my video has really inspired me to continue making content for this channel. I would also like to give a shout out to this gorgeous stellar thumbnail made by Abby that I commissioned for this video. This is the first ever commissioned thumbnail that I've ever used, and I could not be happier with how it turned out. I'll be leaving a link to their Twitter and VGen in the description below in case you would also like to commission them. I very highly recommend them. And of course, here is the rental code for the team that I used to make it to the Masterball tier during my first ever regulation for Pokemon Champions. It's still not a perfect team unfortunately, as it does struggle into other sand teams and specifically Corviknight, but those matchups are absolutely still winnable if you know what you're doing, and I'm excited to hopefully see your takes on this team in the future as well. I hope that this team helps inspire you to create your own teams to climb the ladder as well, whether it's largely based on this team or just loosely inspired. Let me know what your experience is like in the comments below. Once again, I would like to sincerely thank you all so much for watching. If you want to see more from me, I highly recommend checking out my videos on roguelike games that have recently released, such as Mugenics, Sol Sesto, and the previously mentioned Dice A Million. I'm also hoping to release more videos on other roguelikes in the near future, as well as much more Pokemon content. I've got big things planned, even bigger than this, despite this being a much bigger project than I initially envisioned. So if you want to see that, then once again, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And with that, I think that'll do it. Thank you all again so much for your support. I really hope that you all enjoyed, and I'll see you soon in the next video. Peace out!